Good morning, good evening. Welcome to week 7 of Mpai 600 here at Georgetown University's Applied Intelligence program. So just start off with announcements. Two things. One, the job talk. I want to have a job talk during the last Zoom session. I mentioned it during the previous one, but a lot of questions have come up about jobs and working in the careers and getting your foot in the door. And I want to kind of address some of those issues. And some people have already had questions on those. So what we'll do is for the last few groups that will go, we'll go in the Zoom session in week 7 or next, not this coming week, but in week 7.5, we'll do a job talk, and then we will or we'll do the group briefings, and then we'll do a job talk. So please send me your questions beforehand so I can answer them during the job talk, and please be prepared for to ask questions during that session. And then secondly, course evaluations. You'll probably be getting a link from Georgetown. Please do the course evaluations. They really help me target this course for future students. They also help me. There's a very good chance you might have me in the future for another course, so it behoove you to want to make any recommendations or suggestions. So please do them when they come. It really does help out the course and the overall curriculum. So current events, a lot happened this week, but I do want to talk about something that happened. A lot of the Russia investigation and the Mueller report and Mueller testifying before Congress. A lot of that came out this week, and I think it's worthy of mentioning, just because, one, it's important to this course, and two, hint, hint, one of your final questions will be on the 2016 election interference. And a lot has been said about it, and a lot has been convoluted about the Russia interference in the 2016 election. There's all sorts of stories, salacious stories, and all sorts of other things that are in the news. Essentially, what the 2016 interference was, the Russians broke into the Democratic National Committee, several of Clinton's key staffers, broke into their email, broke into their private servers, not for collection, but to weaponize this information and undermine the brand of the Democratic Party. There is nothing more troublesome, whether you're running a business or a political party, where an opponent has insider information on you, bad-mouthing your own product. And that's essentially what the Russian elections did. They broke into John Podesta's email. They broke into the Democratic National Committees. They made sure one factions of the Democrats were pitted against another to undermine Hillary Clinton and to make sure she lost and to support Donald Trump. So there's a lot of questions about Facebook ads and stuff like that. I never really thought that was the big issue. The big issue is breaking into private emails and private servers and distributing that on WikiLeaks so you really make whoever you're trying to target look bad. If this was in the business world, you could imagine if someone hacked into Boeing's server tomorrow and found emails pertaining to the 737, which is the plane that's in trouble right now, and let's say the Boeing CEO said, "I wouldn't let my son fly on a Boeing 737." If that insider information was put out there, that would destroy Boeing like that. And that is what happened to the Democrats and Russian election interference in 2016. That's the issue. What I want you to think about is, could it have been prevented? Did the intelligence community fall on the ground? And what were the failures? Just like you've looked at Pearl Harbor and you've looked at other case studies. So what were the intelligence failures along the lines? Were there failures in analysis, collection, politicization, dissemination? So that's one. And two, were there reasonable risk reduction measures that could have been implemented to prevent the 2016 election interference? Think about that going forward as we progress through this last week of the course. So paper 2, I think I've graded about 95% of everyone. There's still onesies and twosies out there, but I think you should have your grade back. And just some quick issues. Again, most people did fine. They covered the task decently enough. I grade a little bit harder than you might have seen maybe in your undergrad or your other graduate courses you might have taken. And I do that because I want to recognize that you shouldn't take an 88 or an 89 is a bad grade. That's kind of center of mass. But there were a few of you that really hit it out of the park. And I want to recognize those folks with a higher grade. So what were some issues with the paper? Still grammatical spelling issues. That's Bush League at this point. This is graduate school. If you can't proofread and edit, then you're going to have some basic issues going forward, and that's all I'll say about that. Passive voice. I don't think I would say people think they know what passive voice is, but they don't know what it is. Passive voice is very simple. The boy kicked the ball is an active sentence. Subject, verb, direct object. The ball was kicked by the boy is a passive sentence. Object, verb, subject of the sentence. When you read a paper and if there's one passive sentence, it's okay. If half the paper is passive, it's very difficult to follow your line of reasoning and your logic. What I do is when I write, I literally, just like in 9th grade grammar class, subject, verb, direct object, indirect object, preposition. I label the words as I'm going forward so I know sentences are active, that I'm using the right tense, that I'm not using too many prepositions. Those are some key points for writing that I go through, and you should as well. No laundry lists. A lot of people did this. I was very specific at the beginning. I don't want laundry lists, but a lot of people gave me laundry lists. I don't want 15 reasons why Iraq WMD failed. I don't even want 4 or 5 reasons. I want you to make a decision that the primary reason for the Iraq WMD failure was politicization, and then show me in every paragraph how politicization intertwined with the assessments that were made. If you believe that the problem was primarily at the collection level, say that, and then show me how the collection issues cascaded throughout the paper. That was a big, big problem. Please be brutal about focusing on a thesis and backing up your 1 to 2 points with argument throughout whatever assignment you're doing. Specificity. Be as specific as possible. I like to say this: pretend that you're accusing somebody of failure, and that's essentially what you're doing. I'll go back to the Iraq WMD example. If you say politicization was the primary driving factor, show me how Intel estimates were altered due to politicization. If you are doing Pearl Harbor and you say not enough coordination was between the federal level and the commanders on the ground, give me specific examples where federal or information was withheld from the commanders on ground, word for word, and show me how that could have affected decisions made by those commanders. I can't emphasize that enough. You're throwing the finger at somebody and you're saying it's your fault. If someone were to do that to you in real life, your next question will be like, okay, give me a time, place, something along those lines that show me where I went wrong. So specificity is critical. And the last point, and I don't have here, is I mentioned this on a lot of your papers. You have to go from whatever intel indicators, whether it's Pearl Harbor or 9/11, and you have to draw a line to specific risk reduction measures that would have prevented, let's say, a 9/11 in this case. Whether you think if the information was shared, then those people would have been investigated, which would have prevented them from freely boarding a plane and hijacking it. If you think that is the issue, you have to draw out threshold to an investigation could have been met. If you're talking about Pearl Harbor, you have to draw from the GRU memo or those indicators that we talked about in class to specific actions, greater patrols, more assets at Pearl Harbor that could have reduced the issue. Otherwise, you're just Monday morning quarterbacking. So that has to be part of your analysis in your papers. And those were the issues I had with paper 2. And if there's issues or questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And I'm not afraid to talk on the phone or talk on Skype or Zoom if there's something specific that you want me to address, or there's something that you didn't understand in my comments. And then I'll always say this, again, everyone gets criticism on these papers. I don't say, criticism's a hard word, but I owe you my candor and my opinion on these papers, so you can improve upon them going forward. Everyone's going to have mistakes. Everyone's going to have shortfalls in their argument or analysis. I will point it out. I'll point it out to you just so you can improve for the next time. Okay, so previous weeks for you, week 6, we talked about criminal intel, but I do want to, because we have, again, the shooting issues that still come up, and we had a briefing on the Boston Marathon, and this is going to be probably one of your final questions. How do we close the gap for lone wolves between when we know somebody is on the radar of intelligence, but there's not enough to arrest or detain? How do we mitigate that gap? One of the answers or questions that you heard in the debate last week is we limit access to guns. If you're on a terrorism watch list or you're on a mental health watch list or, or something like that, we limit your access to guns so you can't take an automatic weapon and do nefarious things with that. There's 2 points to that question. One, you would have to make sure that everyone who goes into a gun show or buys a gun, that gun owner or gun show proprietor has access to terrorism watch lists or mental health watch lists. Some states they do, but even then, in no state could a guy on a terrorism watch list be restricted from buying a weapon. People want to make those changes to those laws. I'll ask how, I'll let you decide on how effective they are. The other, on the reverse side, if you're law enforcement, what you would love to know, and let's say someone pops on a terrorism watch list, on a mental health watch list, you would love to backtrack whether they are, whether they've purchased 15 guns in the last 2 months. That is a huge indicator of whether that guy might be potential for nefarious activity, and you could zone in on that. Law enforcement would love to have that information. The problem is you would need a national level gun registry, right? You'd have to baseline everyone's gun ownership, and then you would have to know that if they bought a gun in August and then in September they popped up on the watch list, that you can backtrack their gun purchase history. I don't think that's politically feasible, and I'll just leave it at that. But that would help law enforcement, and I'll just end that conversation there. Some of the points from week 6, again, was CompStat the decisive factor? You read 2 arguments in your paper or in your reading, but there are other factors. One, there are now beliefs that some of the CompStat reports were altered. When you incentivize police to fight crime, there is an incentive to alter your reports either physically or to kind of limit your reporting area so you show a decline in crime in your sector. And that was one of the issues with CompStat going forward. And there's other factors that might have led to the decline in crime, whether they're booming economy, demographics, the Stephen Levitt article about abortion, the people that would be committing crimes in the 80s and 90s were aborted in the 70s when it became legal. I'll let you decide on some of those issues. And I know I'm hitting a little bit of the some personal issues, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But there could be other factors for this massive decline in crime that we've seen over the past 25 years. And then you saw in the Boston Marathon video some of those tools used to solve crimes. Whether it's CCTV, whether it's the cell phone cameras, facial recognition. And the question is, one, is it applicable outside of this high-profile incident? Could they be used to undermine just normal criminal activity if we had that level of technology? So that's the first question. The second question is, do we want it? Do we want to live like China, where there's street cameras identifying people going everywhere, almost in like China is a police state, where you get a number to see how loyal to the state you are. How far do we want to take this going forward? And that's a decision for you guys and for others to make on what's the appropriate balance between crime and or crime and technologies that could be used to mitigate crime. So week 7, we're going to go into the business viewpoint. I know most people are not in the business intelligence track, but many people would benefit, again, from some exposure to the business side, business intelligence points going forward. And for this week, well, you're going to have an interview from Dr. Gilad, who is really the pioneer of business intelligence. So we're blessed to have him speaking in this class. And what we're looking at for this week, businesses that operate in the same space. What are the factors that lead one to succeed and the others to fail? Drugstores. CVS is the dominant player, despite essentially offering the same things as Rite Aid and Walgreens do. But CVS has beaten them. Why? Best Buy beat Circuit City. For those of you who might be too young to remember what Circuit City was, but Circuit City was on every street corner for a while. Why? Why did Best Buy win? So businesses that operate in the same space. What are the variables for success and the variables for failure? And then we'll look at applications to national security issues for some of those business intel issues. So please let me know if there's any questions, particularly with the paper. And if there's any issues, let me know. And I look forward to this week's discussion.